After our parents passed away, two couples approached Serena and me at the same time, both wishing to adopt us. Serena dashed ahead, rushing toward the impoverished couple before I could move hill.I'll let you have the wealthy family, she said, looking at me with a sweet smile. I only care about your happiness. That was when I knew she had been reborn too. In our past life, Serena had been the one to rush toward the luxury cars, successfully becoming the pampered daughter of a wealthy family. Yet she couldn't handle their strict rules and discipline. She ended up sneaking out at night to wild out at bars, accidentally leaked classified family secrets, and was ultimately kicked out of the house. Meanwhile, I relied entirely on my own hard work to study abroad, eventually becoming a world-renowned scientific genius. On the day I was set to receive my grand award, Serena completely lost her mind. "Why do you get to live such a free and successful life?" she screamed, as she wished we were both given a second chance to choose. Without a shred of hesitation, I turned around and stepped straight into the luxury car. She had no idea that without money, true freedom didn't even exist. And this wealthy family, they were nothing more than my stepping stone in this life. The very moment I heard my sister Serena's inner thoughts, I knew she had been reborn, too. I watched as she threw herself into the arms of the impoverished couple, turning to me with a perfectly staged, saintly look on her face. "I don't need a life of luxury and wealth," Serena said. "I only want Hill to have a good life." The couple showered her with praise, calling her a sensible and sweet girl. Yet I could hear the malicious sneer echoing clearly in her mind. Serena thought to herself, the Barrington family is only adopting a child because their business is struggling, and they desperately need a tool for a marriage alliance. Enjoy that miserable taste. As for this poor couple, they must be low-key scientific geniuses. This time, that massive global research award is going to be mine. I kept my mouth shut. Without saying a word, I simply turned around and stepped into the luxury car. Serena had absolutely no idea. In our past life, my ability to study abroad relied entirely on the money I saved by working 3 separate jobs, while simultaneously balancing my classes. Scientific breakthroughs were achieved solely through my own grueling, relentless efforts. Did she honestly believe it was all handed to me just because of an adoptive family? This time, with the vast resources and powerful background of the elite Barrington family at my disposal, I would only grow and succeed much faster than in my previous life. The luxury vehicle rolled to a smooth halt in front of a sprawling, magnificent estate. I gazed out at the breathtakingly grand architecture before me, a place I wouldn't have even dared to dream of entering. In my past life, the head butler took my hand, leading me into the manor, and bringing me straight to a meticulously decorated bedroom. "The master and madam are currently busy and will return later tonight," he instructed, his tone clipped and detached. "For now, stay in your room and study the family rules and etiquette. You must memorize every single regulation until you can recite them backward." Though his tone sounded incredibly cold, his actual inner thoughts leaked right into my mind. The butler thought to himself, "This poor child losing both of her parents at such a young age. Now that she has entered high society, I must ensure she masters the rules before meeting the master and madam. That way she won't accidentally break protocol and suffer for it." I blinked. It seemed the people in this household weren't nearly as cold-blooded and ruthless as Serena had claimed. In our past life, my sister had already started throwing tantrums and crying about how miserable she was by this point. But, to me, this minor level of strictness didn't even register as a challenge. Sitting down in the comfortable cushioned study chair, it didn't take long at all for me to commit every single rule to memory. Right at that moment, a sudden icy sensation brushed against my arm. I jerked my head around. A small snow-white snake was slowly slithering up, wrapping its sleek body firmly around my forearm. Its crimson eyes stared directly into mine, its tongue hissing softly as it watched me. Holding my breath, I tentatively reached out with my other hand. To my surprise, the little creature slithered right along my fingers and curled directly into the palm of my hand. "This girl isn't even afraid of it." A silent thought echoed from the doorway. I snapped my head up to look. A lean, slender young man stood at the entrance, shaggy with slightly long hair, partially veiled, his eyes framing an intense melancholic disposition. His gaze pinned me down, tracking my movements like a predatory serpent. I recognized him instantly. He was Owen Barrington, the eldest son of the Barrington family and my new older brother. I recalled how fiercely Serena had detested him in our past life, frequently labeling him a dark-minded, twisted psycho. High society whispered rumors about his eccentric personality, painting him as a reclusive mute, whose thoughts no one could ever decipher. The public only knew that his greatest passion involved breeding bizarre exotic pets. Owen extended his hand, Sensing its master, the small snake smoothly slithered back onto his sharply contoured palm, winding its body around his pale skin. I remained seated, keeping my eyes fixed entirely on the snake. Owen studied me with dark, brooding eyes, maintaining his absolute silence. Yet his mind spoke volumes to me. Owen thought to himself, of course she's terrified of me, just like everyone else. What on earth was I even hoping for? A soft chuckle escaped my lips. Breaking the tension, I reached my hand out toward him. Hi there, I'm Hill, I said, offering a warm smile. Are you my brother? We're family from now on. Owen stiffened, staring at my outstretched hand, as if thoroughly debating whether he should take it. This little guy is incredibly cute, I added, glancing down. What's its name? He looked visibly stunned, requiring a long, heavy pause before he finally managed to respond. Snow. He lightly tapped the snow-white head of the little serpent. Then he reached out and took my hand as our palms met. Snow actively slithered across our joined hands and wrapped itself comfortably back around my forearm. I'm Owen, he murmured. The rumor certainly hadn't lied about him being a man of few words. The moment he uttered those two brief sentences, his lips sealed tight. Once more, however, I caught his mind drifting into a deeper monologue. Owen thought to himself, people have told me they liked snakes before, but the second they actually saw this little one, they slammed it onto the floor on the spot. And some even tried to kill it. He continued to question secretly, are you going to be just like those fake hypocritical liars? Are you only lying right now to get on my good side? His intense gaze locked onto my face. Searching for a crack in my armor, I didn't display a single shred of fear. Instead, I carefully supported Snow and gently stroked the top of its head, treating it no differently than a regular puppy or kitten. Surprisingly cooperative, Snow tilted its head into my touch and playfully flicked its tongue at me, as if saying hello. Owen's pupils vibrated slightly, a profound look of astonishment flashing through his dark eyes. I was nothing like those hypocritical upper-class phonies. In my previous life, I had majored in medicine and possessed a solid grasp of zoology. A snake flicking its tongue was merely its way of scenting and surveying its surroundings, exact behavioral equivalent of a dog or a cat sniffing around a room. Domesticated pet snakes were notoriously docile. As long as they didn't perceive a threat, they would never strike out. Besides, this little guy actually seemed to genuinely like me. My adoptive parents finally returned home by dinner time. They were exactly as the rumors described them. Powerful, commanding figures who naturally exuded the heavy, suffocating pressure of elite high society. So you are Hill, my adoptive father asked, his sharp eyes scanning me. I offered a polite, quiet nod. Seeing how well behaved and composed I was, he seemed reasonably satisfied. I will lay everything out on the table right now, he continued, getting straight to the point. Reason we adopted you is because we need you to secure a marriage alliance with the eldest son of the Herbert family. If you are unwilling, we won't force you. We will simply provide you with a sum of money and let you find a new set of parents. He leaned back slightly, his expression stern. The choice is entirely yours. You decide what you want to do. The necessity of a marriage alliance with the Herberts arose because the Barrington family's influence had been steadily declining in recent years. Coupled with Owen's eccentric and reclusive personality, they deeply worried that their son wouldn't be able to shoulder the heavy burden of running the family empire on his own. In our past life, Serena was supposed to marry the eldest Herbert son to safeguard the corporate conglomerate. Instead, she had thrown a massive fit, flatly refused, and run away from home. Then, after getting completely wasted at a bar, her loose lips leaked confidential corporate secrets, pushing the company to the very brink of bankruptcy. According to Serena's complaints from our previous life, that eldest son of the Herbert family was cold-hearted, ruthlessly strict, and constantly nitpicked everything she did. Yet as I looked at the powerful adoptive parent standing before me, I didn't hesitate for even a fraction of a second. I accept, I answered smoothly. To solidify my place within the Barrington family, I had to agree to their terms first, as long as I eventually use my own capabilities and scientific merit to rescue the family business from its impending crisis. I was confident they wouldn't force me into a marriage I didn't want. My adoptive mother's face softened, and she offered a warm, gentle smile. Good girl. From today onward, you can just call us Mom and Dad. She signaled to a nearby servant, who stepped forward and handed me a tablet. The child of the Barrington family, you will have a tremendous amount of things to learn, she explained. We will arrange private tutors for you. This is your schedule starting tomorrow morning. I took the tablet and looked down at the screen. The display was absolutely packed, completely crowded with a dense, non-stop list of various advanced courses. Right then, a crisp, detached voice suddenly cut through the quiet room. She just joined our family today. There's no need to dump such a massive, suffocating schedule on her right away. It was Owen. The moment he spoke up, both mom and dad stiffened in pure shock. They clearly had never expected their habitually dark, reclusive, and indifferent son to actually open his mouth and defend me. Mom's expression softened slightly. Owen, you know as well as we do that the Herbert family has incredibly high standards for a marriage partner. We are doing this for the sake of the family business. Owen lowered his gaze, his dark eyelashes casting shadows as he intensely pondered something. If I manage to save the company in the future, Owen asked quietly, does that mean she won't have to go through with the marriage alliance? My adoptive parents exchanged a tense, conflicted look. Well, that is. I don't mind it at all. I spoke up to break the heavy silence, bowing politely to them. Mom, Dad, thank you so much for placing your trust in me. Thank God, my adoptive father thought, his posture relaxing by a fraction of a millimeter. The Herbert alliance is secure for now. That buys us at least 18 months to restructure the logistics division. But looking at her, she doesn't look like a lamb led to the slaughter. She's too calm. Why is she looking at me like she's calculating my net worth? Beside him, my adoptive mother's thoughts were softer, though no less pragmatic. What a remarkably poised child. If she has to marry Julian Herbert, I must ensure she is trained by the absolute best. The Herberts are ruthless. If she isn't flawless, they will devour her alive. I won't have a daughter of mine humiliated. We are glad you understand the weight of your position, Hill, Father said, his voice regaining its steady, authoritative baritone. The Barrington name carries privileges, but it also carries heavy demands. Your mother will oversee your daily routine. We expect nothing less than absolute dedication. I won't disappoint you, Father, I replied, keeping my voice level, respectful, and entirely devoid of the eager-to-please desperation that usually characterized children in my position. From the corner of my eye, I caught Owen watching me. He was standing near the shadow of the heavy velvet drapes, his hand resting in his pocket, where Snow had undoubtedly retreated. She's lying, his silent voice echoed in my head, a dark, turbulent current of thought. She agreed too quickly. She's just like the rest of them, using my parents to get what she wants. Or is she? She didn't look at me with disgust. She looked at Snow with interest. Real interest. What is her game? I didn't try to defend myself to his thoughts. Trust isn't built on silent declarations. It is built on consistent, undeniable action. The next morning, my new life began with the precision of a Swiss watch. My schedule was brutal. From 6 in the morning until 9 at night, I was subjected to a relentless barrage of advanced microeconomics, corporate law, French, art history, and elite social etiquette. My tutors were top-tier professionals, accustomed to dealing with spoiled heiresses who threw tantrums over the slightest inconvenience. In our past life, Serena had lasted exactly 3 days before she began screaming at the piano instructor, smashing a vintage porcelain tea set, and locking herself in her room to cry about how oppressed she was. But to me, this was a luxury. In my previous life, I had balanced a triple major workload while pulling 12-hour shifts at a convenience store and a chemistry lab just to pay for my basic meals and tuition. I had slept on cold library floors, survived on expired convenience store sandwiches, and memorized complex organic chemistry formulas while my feet throbbed from standing all day. Being tutored in a temperature-controlled room with a private chef preparing my meals was not a punishment. It was a paradise of efficiency. Within 3 weeks, my microeconomics tutor, a retired university professor with a notoriously harsh grading standard, sat back in his chair and stared at me over his spectacles. This is absurd, his mind drifted, filled with sheer bewilderment. She isn't just memorizing the material. She's analyzing the market trends of our family's competitors. Her grasp of resource allocation is advanced. She's 15, but she reasons like an executive analyst. Is she a prodigy, or have I simply been teaching fools for too long? An excellent analysis, Miss Hill, he said aloud, clearing his throat. We will move on to the mergers and acquisitions module tomorrow. Thank you, Professor, I said politely, closing my leather-bound notebook. I look forward to it. As the door closed behind him, I didn't rest. I opened my personal tablet, not the one monitored by my mother, but a secondary one I had acquired using a small portion of the allowance my father had granted me. It was time to check on my dear sister, Serena. Through basic public records and school registration databases, I easily located her new living situation. She had chosen the Chans, a couple living in a cramped, dilapidated apartment on the industrial outskirts of the city. In our past life, Serena had heard a rumor that a low-key, brilliant scientist couple had attempted to adopt from our orphanage, but had been turned away due to their low income. Serena, desperate to replicate my self-made genius trajectory without doing the actual work, had assumed the Chans were those hidden geniuses. A quiet, dry smile touched my lips as I pulled up the public court records for Arthur and Eleanor Chan. They weren't scientists. Arthur Chan was a failed laboratory technician who had been fired from a mid-tier pharmaceutical firm 5 years ago for falsifying research data. Eleanor was a chronic gambler who worked part-time at a local clinic, constantly using her position to steal prescription medication to pay off her debts. They were currently drowning in high-interest loans. They had wanted to adopt an older child not out of a desire for parenthood, but because our local government offered a substantial monthly subsidy for fostering older orphans, alongside tax exemptions for dependents with academic potential. They wanted a cash cow, I thought, closing the browser. And Serena offered herself up on a silver platter. Suddenly, my bedroom door creaked open. I didn't startle. I slowly closed the tab and looked up. Owen stood in the doorway, his pale face partially hidden by his messy dark hair. Snow was draped loosely around his neck like a living, pearlescent collar. "She's always working," his mind whispered, a mixture of curiosity and deep-seated caution. "My parents think she's preparing to be a perfect bride for the Herberts. But her eyes, they aren't the eyes of someone waiting to be sold. Why does she look at those business reports like she wants to conquer them?" "Owen," I said, offering him a soft smile. "Come in. Is Snow hungry?" Owen hesitated, then stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. He walked over to my desk, his movements quiet and fluid, almost serpentine. He reached up, gently lifting Snow from his neck and placing the snake on the polished mahogany of my desk. Snow immediately slithered toward me, its small head tilting as it caught my scent. I extended my index finger, allowing the little snake to wrap its cool, smooth body around my wrist. "She likes you," Owen murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "She doesn't usually like people. People are too loud, too angry." "Animals can sense intent, Owen," I said, gently stroking the snake's scales. "They know when someone is calm, and they know when someone is hiding their teeth. I have nothing to hide from Snow. Or from you." Owen's pupils dilated slightly. His mind flared with a sudden, intense spike of emotion. "She's lying. She must be. Everyone hides their teeth. My mother does it with a smile, my father does it with a contract. But she feels different. When she touches Snow, her heart rate doesn't even spike. She's genuinely calm." "You're studying the Herbert merger," Owen said suddenly, his eyes dropping to the papers on my desk. "I am," I replied. "The Herberts are trying to squeeze the Barrington shipping lines. They've steadily bought up the deepwater port leases in the eastern sector. If father doesn't secure the marriage alliance, the Herberts will raise the tariff rates, and our shipping division will collapse within 2 fiscal quarters." Owen flinched, his jaw tightening. "They want to use you to buy their way out of a corner. It's disgusting." If I were stronger, his inner voice snarled, filled with a bitter, agonizing self-loathing. If I wasn't like this, if I could handle the boardrooms and the lies, they wouldn't have to sell her. I'm the eldest son. I'm the failure. I looked at him, my gaze steady and unwavering. "Owen," I said, my voice quiet but carrying an immense, solid weight. "Do you think the only way to save a family is by sitting in a boardroom and shaking hands with liars?" He blinked, startled by my question.
"What?"
"The Herberts are powerful because they control the physical infrastructure of transport," I said, turning my tablet to show him a complex biological pathway diagram I had been drafting. "But infrastructure is easily replaced if you possess something they cannot live without. Look at this." Owen leaned in, his dark eyes scanning the screen. As his gaze drifted over the molecular structures and genetic sequencing notes, his inner voice fell completely silent, replaced by a sudden, sharp focus. He wasn't a mute, useless psycho. In our past life, Serena had dismissed his exotic pets as a creepy hobby. But I knew better. Owen's interest in breeding rare, highly specific reptiles wasn't a sign of madness. It was the hyperfocus of a brilliant, untapped geneticist. He had spent years studying the complex enzymatic properties of rare venoms, mapping out their interactions with cellular receptors in his own private terrariums. "This is a neuropeptide delivery system," Owen whispered, his fingers hovering over the screen. "You're using a modified alpha-neurotoxin template to bypass the blood-brain barrier."
"But how?"
"The cellular toxicity of this specific chain is too high. It would cause systemic lysis before it reached the target receptors." "It would," I agreed, a genuine spark of excitement igniting in my chest. "Unless we modify the binding pocket using the specific disulfide bond arrangement found in the venom of the Atheris squamidra variant you've been breeding in the West Wing." Owen's head snapped up. His eyes locked onto mine, his mind screaming with absolute, brilliant realization. "She knows." His thoughts roared, no longer dark or brooding, but alive with a fierce, burning scientific passion. "She actually understands my work. She didn't look at my terrariums as a freak show. She saw the data. She saw the potential. If we use that variant," Owen stammered, his usual reticence completely vanishing. The peptide would remain completely inert until it interacts with the specific high-density lipoprotein receptors in the cerebral cortex. We could deliver therapeutic compounds directly to damaged neural tissue. We could cure degenerative neuropathy. We could revolutionize the entire biomedical sector. I finished, holding his gaze. And the Barrington family wouldn't need a shipping line to survive. The Herberts would be begging us for a licensing agreement. Owen stared at me, his breathing shallow. For the first time since I had entered this house, the defensive, guarded walls in his mind completely crumbled, leaving behind a raw, trembling sense of hope. She doesn't want to be saved, he realized, his inner voice whispering with a profound, quiet awe. She's here to rewrite the entire board. And she wants me to help her do it. When do we start? He asked. I smiled, gently transferring Snow back to his outstretched hand. Tonight. Over the next year, my life became a study in duality. By day, I was the perfect, dutiful adoptive daughter of the Barrington family. I excelled in my academic courses, attended elite charity galas at my mother's side, and earned the quiet, growing respect of the high society elders. I met Julian Herbert once during a formal dinner. He was exactly as Serena had described him. Cold, precise, and demanding. He looked at me not as a person, but as an acquisition, a neat piece of ledger work to be integrated into his family's portfolio. She's quiet. Julian's inner thoughts had murmured during our brief conversation. Well-behaved. She'll fit into the household without causing the kind of dramatic scenes her sister used to make. A suitable, quiet wife. I had smiled politely, keeping my thoughts locked behind an impenetrable wall of courtesy. Let him think I was a quiet acquisition. The higher his confidence, the sweeter his eventual realization would be. By night, however, the real work took place. Owen's private sanctuary in the West Wing was transformed into a state-of-the-art, covert molecular biology lab. With my advanced medical and scientific knowledge from my past life and Owen's practical, unparalleled genius in venom extraction and genetic breeding, we worked in absolute, seamless tandem. We didn't sleep more than 4 hours a night. We ran assays, synthesized peptide chains, and monitored the cellular cultures under the quiet hum of the centrifuges. Through it all, the bond between Owen and me grew unbreakable. He was no longer the reclusive, brooding shadow of the Barrington house. He walked with a quiet, grounded confidence, his eyes sharp and alert. My parents noticed the change, though they couldn't understand it. Owen is speaking more, my mother thought one evening at dinner, watching her son politely ask for the salad. He looks healthy. He isn't locking himself away for days on end. Is it because of Hill? Has her presence truly stabilized him? Perhaps we don't need to sell the entire legacy, my father mused silently, his eyes drifting over us. If Owen can actually function, if he can step up. I kept my head down, cutting my steak with elegant precision. Just wait, father, I thought. We are about to give you a legacy that no one can ever take away. 2 years after our adoption, the high society social season kicked off with the annual Spring Gala, a massive, glittering affair where the elite gathered to display their wealth, negotiate mergers, and show off their children. It was also the night Serena chose to make her grand return. I stood beside my adoptive parents near the grand marble staircase of the ballroom, dressed in a custom-tailored, deep emerald silk gown that perfectly complemented my quiet, refined demeanor. Owen stood beside me, looking remarkably handsome in a sharp, tailored tuxedo, his posture upright and commanding. Suddenly, a commotion at the entrance drew the attention of the crowd. I tell you, we have an invitation, a harsh, shrill voice echoed through the foyer. I turned my head. There stood Serena, accompanied by Arthur and Eleanor Chan. The contrast was staggering. Serena was wearing a dress that was clearly a cheap, poorly fitted imitation of a designer gown. Her hair, once perfectly styled in our past life, was dry and frizzy at the ends. Her face was caked in heavy makeup, but it couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes or the thin, gaunt hollows of her cheeks. Arthur and Eleanor looked even worse, wearing rented formal where that smelled faintly of mothballs, their eyes darting around the luxurious ballroom with a mixture of desperate greed and intimidation. Look at them, Serena's inner voice screamed, a toxic, boiling mixture of envy and delusional pride. Look at all these snobs. They think they're so high and mighty. Just wait until my parents' project gets funded. I'll buy this entire hotel. And Hill. Her eyes locked onto me, and her thoughts turned into a screech of pure, unadulterated malice. There she is, the perfect little doll. Look at that expensive dress. She thinks she's one. She has no idea she's just a pig being fattened for the slaughter. The Herberts are going to destroy her. Meanwhile, I'm free. I'm the daughter of the future Nobel laureates. I felt a sudden, cold touch on my hand. It was Owen, gently squeezing my fingers, his eyes fixed on Serena with a dark, protective intensity. Should I have them thrown out? Owen's mind whispered to me, his protective instincts flaring. They don't belong near you. No, I replied to him with a tiny, imperceptible shake of my head. Let her play her hand. Serena pushed past the security guards, dragging the Chans toward our family. The guests parted, whispering and giggling behind their champagne flutes at the bizarre spectacle. Hill, Serena called out, her voice dripping with a forced, sweet sisterly affection that made my skin crawl. Oh, my sweet sister. It's been so long. She threw her arms around me. I didn't pull away, but I didn't embrace her back. As her head rested near my shoulder, her real thoughts hissed directly into my mind. You miserable, lucky bitch. Enjoy your silk and diamonds while they last. In a few months, you'll be locked in the Herbert estate, crying yourself to sleep just like I did. While I will be the queen of the scientific world. Serena, I said softly, stepping back and smoothing my dress. It's good to see you. You look busy. Oh, I am, Serena declared loudly, ensuring the surrounding guests could hear her. My brilliant adoptive parents and I have been working tirelessly in the lab. We've made a breakthrough, a revolutionary discovery that will render the traditional pharmaceutical giants completely obsolete. She turned to Arthur Chan, who quickly puffed out his chest, trying to look like an intellectual. Yes, Arthur said, his voice loud and arrogant. Our laboratory has successfully synthesized a novel compound for targeted cellular regeneration. We are currently seeking a visionary investor to fund our final stage of clinical trials. A mere $10 million investment will yield a 100-fold return within a year. The surrounding guests exchanged skeptical, amused glances. The Barrington family's business associates were seasoned venture capitalists. They could smell a desperate pitch from a mile away. My adoptive father stepped forward, his eyes cold and dismissive. This is a private gala, Mr. Chan. If you wish to pitch a business proposal, you should submit it to our acquisitions department through the proper channels. Security will show you out. Wait, Serena cried, her voice cracking with desperation. Mr. Barrington, you don't understand. We are offering you the first right of refusal. If you invest in us, you won't need to sell your daughter to the Herberts to save your company. I'm doing this for Hill. I only want her to be happy. Lie to them, believe it, you old fools. Serena's mind roared with hysterical laughter. Take the bait. Invest your remaining capital into our project, and when the data turns out to be a dead end, the Barringtons will go completely bankrupt. Hill will be thrown out on the street, and I will buy her contract for pennies. I almost wanted to sigh. In her desperate bid to ruin me, Serena had completely forgotten the most basic rule of science. You cannot fake the data forever. Serena, I said, my voice cutting through her dramatic display with a quiet, icy clarity. What is the specific chemical structure of your compound? Serena froze. Her eyes widened, and her mind went momentarily blank before filling with a frantic, chaotic panic. What? What structure? Why is she asking that? She's just a high schooler. How does she even know that term? It's a proprietary formula, Serena stammered, casting a panicked look at Arthur Chan. Arthur quickly stepped in, his face flushing red. Yes, it is highly confidential. We cannot disclose the structural formula to a layperson. A layperson? I murmured, taking a step forward. You claim to have synthesized a targeted cellular regeneration compound. But according to the Public Patent Registry, Arthur, you filed a provisional patent application last month under the title Modified Chitosan-Based Hydrogel Scaffolds. The room went dead silent. Arthur's face turned from red to a ghostly, pale white. A hydrogel scaffold is not a revolutionary cellular regeneration compound. I continued, my voice calm, precise, and entirely unbothered. It is a basic, off-the-shelf wound dressing material that has been used in clinical settings for over 2 decades. Your patent application was rejected 3 days ago due to prior art and obviousness. Furthermore, your private laboratory was issued a cease and desist order by the Municipal Health Board yesterday for operating without a valid biosafety level license. Every word I spoke was like a physical blow, striking Serena and the Chans down in front of the entire high society elite. How does she know this? Serena's mind screamed in pure, terror-stricken agony. How could she possibly know about the rejection? We only got the letter yesterday. She's supposed to be studying etiquette and playing the piano. Why does she know about patent law? You're lying, Serena shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. You're just jealous. You're trying to ruin my family's reputation because you're stuck in this gilded cage. The only ones ruining your reputation, Serena, are yourselves. Owen spoke up, his voice steady, deep, and carrying a terrifying authority that shocked even my parents. He stepped to my side, looking down at Serena with cold, unyielding disgust. If you do not leave this venue immediately, I will have the security team hand over the police reports regarding Arthur Chan's illegal acquisition of prescription narcotics to the authorities tonight. Eleanor Chan let out a sharp gasp, grabbing her husband's arm. Arthur, let's go. Let's go right now. Without another word, the three of them turned and fled from the ballroom, their hasty retreat accompanied by the quiet, mocking laughter of the high society guests. My adoptive father looked at me, a profound, intense look of shock and realization dawning in his eyes. She didn't just study the market, he thought, his mind racing. She investigated our competitors. She tracked a failed patent. She protected this family before we even knew we were in danger. Hill, father said, his voice softer than it had ever been. How did you acquire that information? I believe in knowing my environment, father, I said, offering him a gentle, reassuring smile. And I believe in protecting the people who gave me a home. The final act of our past life's tragedy was fast approaching, but this time, the script had been completely rewritten. 2 weeks after the spring gala, the Barrington corporate crisis reached its boiling point. The Herberts delivered their final ultimatum. Either sign the marriage contract between Julian and myself, granting the Herberts a 51% controlling share in the Barrington Shipping Logistics Division, or the Herberts would enforce the newly acquired deepwater port tariffs, bankrupting our logistics sector within a month. My parents sat in the grand study, the atmosphere heavy with defeat. We have no choice, father muttered, his hand trembling as he held the contract. If we don't sign, the entire family empire collapses. Hill, I am sorry. I wanted to give you a choice, but do not sign it, father, I said, stepping into the study. Beside me, Owen walked in, carrying a sleek, metallic briefcase. Hill, this is not the time for stubbornness, mother said, her eyes red from crying. We are out of options. We are not out of options, mother, Owen said, stepping forward and placing the briefcase on the desk. He snapped the latches open, revealing a neatly organized stack of patent approvals, clinical trial data, and a gleaming glass vial containing a clear, iridescent liquid. What is this? Father asked, looking at the vial with bewilderment. This is the future of medicine, Owen said, a proud, brilliant smile breaking across his face. It is a targeted peptide delivery system that utilizes modified neurotoxin structures to cross the blood-brain barrier. It has been fully patented under the joint names of Hill Barrington and Owen Barrington. And yesterday, we received fast-track clinical approval from the Federal Medical Board. My father's breath hitched. He grabbed the documents, his eyes flying over the pages. This is impossible, his mind screamed, his heart pounding in his chest. A fast-tracked biomedical patent? The licensing value alone of this technology, it's worth billions. The Herberts shipping lines are nothing compared to this. We aren't bankrupt. We are about to become the most powerful conglomerate in the country. The two of you did this? Mother whispered, tears streaming down her face as she looked at us. Hill designed the molecular blueprint and I synthesized the compound, Owen said, reaching out to wrap his arm around my shoulders. We did this together. For our family. The door to the study was suddenly pushed open, and Julian Herbert stepped in, accompanied by his legal team. He looked smug, confident, and entirely in control. Mr. Barrington, Julian said, his voice cold and clipped. The deadline has passed. Have you signed the contract? I stepped forward, taking the unsigned marriage contract from my father's desk. With a slow, deliberate motion, I tore the document directly down the middle, letting the pieces flutter to the polished floor. Julian's eyes narrowed, a dark, dangerous flash passing through his gaze. What is the meaning of this, Hill? Have you lost your mind? No, Julian, I said, looking him dead in the eye, my voice echoing with the absolute power of a self-made titan. I have simply found my leverage. The Barrington family has no interest in your shipping lines. In fact, within the hour, our legal team will be filing a public announcement of our new biomedical venture. If the Herbert Group wishes to keep their logistics contracts with our new pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities, you will have to renegotiate your tariff rates. By half. Julian froze. His mind, usually so precise and calculated, shattered into a chaotic mess of shock and disbelief. She tore the contract? His thoughts screamed. Biomedical venture? What is she talking about? She's 15. She's supposed to be a tool. How is she standing there looking at me like I'm a bug under a microscope? We are done here, Julian, I said, gesturing toward the door. My assistant will send your legal team the new partnership parameters tomorrow. If you don't like them, we can always take our manufacturing contracts to your competitors. For a long, agonizing moment, Julian stared at me, his face pale and his pride utterly shattered. Without a single word, he turned and stormed out of the room, his lawyers scurrying after him like frightened mice. As the door slammed shut, my adoptive father let out a long, breathless laugh, burying his face in his hands as tears of pure relief and joy spilled over his fingers. We are saved, his mind sang in a beautiful, harmonious chorus of gratitude. My children, my brilliant, wonderful children saved us. A week later, the global scientific community was rocked by the official announcement of the Barrington Peptide Delivery System. Owen and I were invited to attend the prestigious Global Science and Innovation Summit to receive the Grand Breakthrough Award, the very award I had been set to receive in my past life. As I walked down the red carpet of the convention hall, dressed in a stunning, minimalist white gown, the camera flashes were blinding. Owen walked beside me, his head held high, his hand resting comfortably in mine. Suddenly, I saw a familiar figure standing near the barricades of the public viewing area. It was Serena. She was dressed in a tattered, dirty winter coat, her face pale, thin, and entirely devoid of life. Arthur and Eleanor Chan had abandoned her after their fraudulent laboratory was seized by the state, leaving her to face the massive debts they had accumulated in her name. She stared at me through the crowd, her eyes wide, empty, and filled with a devastating, horrific realization. It wasn't the adoptive family, her inner voice whispered, no longer angry, but completely broken, hollow, and drowning in a sea of pure, agonizing regret. It was never the money. It was her. Hill didn't become a genius because she was lucky. She became a genius because she worked, because she clawed her way up, while I threw away my potential because I wanted an easy path. I gave up my freedom for a shortcut that led to a dead end. She watched as I climbed the steps of the grand stage, the applause of the world's greatest minds washing over me like a tidal wave. I stopped at the podium, looking out at the glittering crowd, and for a brief moment, my eyes met Serena's. I didn't mock her. I didn't sneer. I simply looked at her with a quiet, peaceful indifference. In this life, as in the last, we had both been given a choice. She had chosen to chase the illusion of unearned wealth, while I had chosen to build my own empire, brick by painful brick. Thank you, I said into the microphone, my voice echoing clear and strong throughout the massive hall. This award is not just a testament to scientific discovery. It is a reminder that true freedom is never handed to you. It is built, it is earned, and it is entirely within your own hands. As the crowd erupted into a standing ovation, Owen stepped up beside me, and Snow gently peeked her small, pearlescent head out from his sleeve, flicking her tongue in a quiet, content greeting. I smiled, holding the heavy golden award in my hands. The path had been long, and the climb had been grueling. But as I looked at the family I had saved, and the brilliant, limitless future stretching out before me, I knew that this time, the victory was entirely, beautifully mine.